Support for this episode comes from Signature Bank.
Hey, this is Gary Head at Signature Bank of Arkansas. We started this bank 20 years ago to serve our communities with local decision-making and personal relationships. From Fayetteville to Jonesboro, we've grown to 210 teammates, and we're proud to serve all of our customers, including through Banco C, our bilingual banking service. Call 479-684-3700 or visit signature.bank and tell us you heard about us on I Am Northwest Arkansas.
This episode is brought to you by finditnwa.com, your hyper-local business directory connecting you with the best of Northwest Arkansas. Whether you're looking for a new place to eat, a trusted service provider, or unique local shops, Find It NWA has you covered. We also highlight businesses with a featured listing on the site. That means if you're a small business owner in NWA, you could be next. Discover more at finditnwa.com.
It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Here's our host, Randy Wilburn.
Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Today, we're diving into the heart of Ozark heritage and the ways history lives and breathes across our region. Our guest is Angie Albright, director of the Shiloh Museum of Ozark History in Springdale. Angie brings a unique perspective to preserving regionally rooted stories. She's led museum and development efforts and helped to evolve Shiloh's programming and championed projects to open the museum's doors, not just to visitors, but to the entire community. Without further ado, Angie Albright, welcome to the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's so good to finally, come here and check out the museum. I am a museum buff, as I shared with you, as a history major in college. And a lot of people know that because I've mentioned it. If I've mentioned it once, I've mentioned it 1,000 times on my podcast. I think, those that forget history are doomed to repeat it. And I think that a museum is such a great place for you to learn about history and to appreciate it even more. And I think what you guys have done here is simply incredible. And folks, as we share throughout this episode, I really want to encourage you, if you do nothing else after listening to this podcast, you've got to get down to the Shiloh Museum of Ozark History and check it out for yourself. But we'll make sure you get all the contact information, the hours, and everything else related to this wonderful museum right in downtown Springdale. But we certainly want to just learn a little bit more about this museum and why it is so special. And so, Angie, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your personal journey from Iowa to Arkansas? And I know there's places in between there, and how you came into museum leadership.
Well, when I was growing up as a farm kid in Southwest Iowa, my family very history-oriented, loved culture. We did visit museums. My dad was one of those people who stopped at every historical marker wherever we went. But I didn't really know museum was a job.
Yeah.
I didn't ever, when you're a kid, you don't think about that. And especially we lived in a small rural town, you don't really think about that. And I went to Iowa State, couldn't decide on a major. And my boyfriend, who was going to another college at the time, we came to Fayetteville just to visit. We'd heard it was kind of cool over spring break in 1987. And I remember very specifically driving down Maple Street and Lafayette. And as we were coming up the hill and Old Main is in front of us, it just felt like home immediately. And we both felt that way. And we got married that year and moved here. We transferred and came to the University of Arkansas. And I stayed here for my bachelor's, master's, and doctoral work. And chose English because the advisor said I had to choose something because I thought everything was interesting. And finally, I picked English because it embodied history, philosophy, religion, politics, government. Everything was in that major in a way. So then when I was in graduate school, I was what they called a new historicist, which meant I liked thinking about the history that shaped a piece of literature.
Yeah.
And when I read Richard Wright's Black Boy for the first time in a seminar with Professor Ken Kinnaman, who was a specialist in Wright, I just fell in love and knew that's what I had to do. And so my focus became Black writing, especially around the 30s and 40s.
Okay.
But what I loved about it also was Black writers had a way, history was in everything they were doing, because everybody, they're uncovering and discovering and thinking about how they got here, how to manage being in a very racist society, all those things. And it just stuck with me. And so I went on to teach. I wanted to be a professor. And then I got tired of grading English papers. I loved the teaching part. And so then I went into the nonprofit sector to get some more experience. And then I find myself in the museum setting and like, well, this brings together my whole academic life, my nonprofit management side. Shiloh Museum is a department of the city of Springdale.
Okay.
I'm also a government nerd, so I also get to work for municipal government and see firsthand the great work that good government can do and how it shapes a community. And the city lets us, we've had a great relationship. We've always been a part of the city since 1968, and we cover 6 counties of the Arkansas Ozarks. And it's the city of Springdale that we have to thank for that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I said, I think we all use the word Ozarks without really thinking about it.
That's right.
And, it's like sometimes I have a hard time kind of getting my head around and my hands around this whole area and what comprises the Ozarks.
Right.
Can you mention the 6 counties? Am I putting you on the spot now?
No, I do this a lot. Yeah. Washington, Benton, Carroll, Madison, Boone, and Newton counties.
Okay.
And it makes a neat kind of rectangle, but of course the Arkansas Ozarks go further east than that.
Sure.
But it's just a little too far away. And of course the Ozarks extend over into Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri. And you do feel a little bit of a difference, like when you're in the Missouri Ozarks. Yeah. Culturally, there are some different things, but people often think of Missouri more than Arkansas.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think, I always think of that TV show on Netflix, Ozarks. And of course, everybody thinks about that. And I'm like, well, I had to explain to people that, that it was actually, the lake of that is the Lake of the Ozarks, which is in Missouri, not in Arkansas. And so there are some differences there. But suffice it to say, I think that the Ozarks, when you think of the Ozarks, or the Indian pronunciation is O-Ark, I think is right. Yeah. So, and I learned that from the folks at Mona. Shout out to those guys. But there are no shortage of historical places or repositories of information about what makes this area so special. Why is the Shiloh Museum experiencing a renaissance of sorts when it comes to people becoming aware of this area and the history around it?
I think there are probably 2 or 3 things going on there. One of them is the city of Springdale is flourishing and it's having its moment. And I think every city in our region, especially on the interstate corridor, has had its moment. And I think Springdale's having its turn right now. And so being in downtown Springdale means we're right there with the new restaurants and the festivals and the concerts and the new parks and the Greenway. We're right on the Razorback Greenway. So that's one part of it. Obviously, the population is exploding and people want things to do. And like the Shiloh Museum is just a little bit different. Some people, if you're not the art person, like we have some great art experiences in our region, of course, but that's not everybody's thing. Or you can do it a couple times a year. You don't want to do it every weekend. Yeah. Right. And so we get to play a role there. And then we serve 20 to 30,000 school kids a year.
Wow.
On field trips and programming and that kind of thing. So we also help fill a need for our schools in the region.
And I would imagine the kids that come here, what are the normal reactions that you hear from them about this area? Or what do you awaken in this next generation that is, I think, so important to remember?
I think we're pretty cynical about young people, and we think they can't get off their phones and they can't stop playing video games. And that might be a little bit true. But it is really fun to watch a group like I did of 5th graders from Pea Ridge, and they all had their phones out. They were in the exhibit hall, and I started to roll my eyes, and then I realized they were using it to interact with everything. Yeah. And they're saying, this is cool. I want to remember that. Yeah. What is this thing? Yeah. And the way they were interacting with each other and talking, it was like, oh, this is really productive. And they were excited. Yeah. We had an event one night where a little boy said, are you telling me you brought that carriage, and he called it a chariot. He called it a chariot. That you brought that chariot from the past to be here now.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, we did. And he just couldn't believe it. And so it's really helpful and inspiring, motivating to see little kids be excited about something that's beyond them. It helps them think about what came before me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that in and of itself is a tremendous eye opener for young people, that they can kind of understand, oh man, there's a lot that happened even before I was born.
Right.
And I remember as a kid growing up outside of New York City, we used to go to the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art. We would go to the New York Museum, History Museum, and there were just so many outstanding collections that we got to see. And it really did leave an imprint on me as a young person. And to this day, I love museums. Like I could go spend a whole day in a museum. I was just up at Crystal Bridges as if I haven't been there a gajillion times.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I'm spending the whole day here. I was taking somebody that's an exchange student that's living with us currently. We were taking him up here for his first time, but I'm just like a kid in a candy store whenever I'm in a museum. And even here, it was hard for you to pull me away from some of the exhibits that you were taking me through. And I was like, man, I got to get back here to really kind of just take my time and kind of go through all of the different aspects of the exhibit.
Well, I'm telling you that museum, tourism, and history conferences are the best because you go to all these places that it's supposed to be work at this conference, and it's the place you would go if you were on vacation anyway. And so it never feels like work to a lot of us because like we get to go behind the scenes at some really cool places. Or I was just in Cincinnati and had no idea that Cincinnati had such a rich cultural life. And I learned it through museums. And,
Well, they have an amazing civil rights museum. They have a number of museums in Cincinnati. So
it's great.
Yeah, really, really good stuff. How has, you mentioned that you were an English professor. How has your background in English as a whole shaped how you approach history specifically and then storytelling? Because the two kind of are inextricably linked.
Absolutely. When you're doing public history, which is what we do, you're trying to find ways to tell stories about the past, sometimes recent past, sometimes distant past, right? But you have to make them relatable to the everyday person.
Yeah.
And you have to try to find hooks into the storytelling, just like if you were writing a novel and you're trying to get somebody on that first page. It's that same thing. So understanding the structure of storytelling, Joseph Campbell's myth structure, all those things, like that all completely fits when you're trying to help people understand something about the past and you can shape it into the story. Brene Brown, I heard in an interview yesterday, she loves to say that we are wired for storytelling.
Yeah.
It's why we love movies and books and YouTube and all these kinds of things, because we all love stories and we connect to them in some way.
Yeah, it is. You mentioned two of my favorite people to either study or read. Brene Brown, for sure. I love her podcast. And then you talk about the hero's journey in Joseph Campbell. And, I always, take the hero's journey and distill it down to Star Wars. So you start with that, right? And you think of the arc of Luke Skywalker from beginning to end and what that represents. And we all have our hero's journey.
Right.
And the goal, I think, in life as a whole, but then also as we look at life and as we look at the things that are around us, how do they play a part in our path and our journey?
Exactly. That was my favorite thing to teach. When I was teaching, I was assigned the first time early world literature.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I like more modern stuff. And I got completely into it. And it was really fun to introduce students to the oldest literature we know of in the world, stories, and they're grappling with the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So Beowulf is mourning the loss of his best friend who died. And what does it mean to die? What does it mean to live and love and all those things? And watching students be able to identify especially through film today, but the stories we were reading and the things in their lives today, that was the best part.
Yeah. Well, and and that's why I always try to explain to my kids the value of literature, and specifically like, you talk to a young person nowadays and like, well, why? I mean, Shakespeare doesn't relate to me. And I'm like, it absolutely does, and that's the whole thing.
The language is hard, but the story
language
does.
is hard, but the storyline
absolutely
is a through line. That's why people, when you look at a lot of the retelling of Shakespearean work, you can easily apply it to modern day.
That's right.
In just about every situation.
That's right.
So, yeah, I mean, I absolutely love that. What is since you've been here, how many years now?
About 4.5 years.
Wow. Okay. So you've been here 4.5 years. You've had a chance to kind of set your feet and kind of get your wits about you in terms of what you'd like to see done, the things that you wanted to change. And so you're almost embarking upon your 5th year. What is your vision for the Shiloh Museum under your leadership?
Thank you for that question. I had wonderful predecessors. I'm only the 3rd director since 1968. Wow. So everybody comes here and stays.
Yeah.
So everybody comes here and stays a long time. And
So you're buckled up then, basically.
Yes. But one of the things that I see around me is cultural organizations changing. And you see that in all the new museum literature and in the new theories and practices and all those things, and understanding museums as more than just static places where they stay the same, but as cultural community centers. And when we bring people together in these spaces, they get to experience somebody else's story, maybe through an exhibit or a program, but then they're also connecting to each other. And we've been seeing that happen, especially this year, over and over again. And it's been an amazing thing. My favorite thing is seeing a room full of people who are happy to be there. And I think we threw a party and a bunch of people came. And what we're talking about is Native American foodways,
right?
And that kind of thing. But bringing people together to connect with each other and learn a little bit more about each other is, to me, the most important thing.
Oh, I would have to imagine so. And you have a tremendous staff available as well that kind of help you do this. So you're not doing it by yourself.
Not at all. We have a great staff.
Yeah. So tell me talk a little bit about your staff and why it's important to, as a museum director, to really surround yourself by some highly competent individuals. I'm using air quotes now, but that makes your job easier.
Very much.
And it also makes the product itself better.
People who go into this work don't take it lightly because, frankly, there's not a lot of jobs doing cultural or museum work or history work. And so people who are here want to be here, and people who come here for other kinds of jobs end up falling in love with the mission as well. So we convert them over. So there's a commitment there and a love of learning that is hard to find. And I've done other kinds of jobs and I liked everything for one reason or another, but that curiosity that everyone has here, I think, is what's special. But also we get to pick the best of the folks out there because there aren't a lot of these jobs.
Yeah. Well, and again, like I said, there's only but so many museums anywhere, right?
Exactly.
And I think for some people, they think, oh, well, that's just like every community has a museum. Whether or not it's something at the forefront of things, it really just depends. But I think the reason why what you do matters and is so important is because you guys are some of the primary archivists of what has come before.
That's right.
And so you want people that are invested in that storytelling, which you are, obviously, and as an extension, everybody that you work with.
I think what people don't always realize about history museums, and certainly ours, is the number of archivists and librarian types who are also involved, because there are all these things that we put on display, but there are hundreds of thousands of things, photos and artifacts and things that we have here that will never be on display.
Yeah.
But what we're doing is keeping for research as a touchstone to another era, telling a particular story, but we think of ourselves as the caretakers of our material culture. Yeah. And it's our job to be good stewards of that.
Absolutely. And that actually leads me to my next question, which when you think about just the role of a museum, how do you balance preservation, which is key, with innovation and engaging new audiences, like those young kids that we just talked about that are in here snapping with their phones or throwing something up on TikTok really fast?
There are great practitioners and theorists and people around the country also thinking about the same things. And we all love to come together in meetings and conferences and webinars and all kinds of things and hash these things out. And it's really easy to get involved in the museum community and get to know people. So one of the things we're always doing is just talking to everybody out there. What's working for you? What's not working for you? When I talk about preservation for buildings, same problem. And I think when you think about a historic building, which we have 7 of, the question in preservation is always the same one over and over. How do you keep a thing original and feeling like it's original space and spirit and all those kinds of things, but use more contemporary technologies and materials to make it safer or more sustainable? Or maybe that original kind of product that used to do a thing in a building just isn't available anymore. Yeah. So you're always balancing the new with the old. And that's what we're always doing here. And I would say it's the same, like when we talk about interactives for programs. Schools aren't the same as they used to be.
No.
And so we work a lot with teachers. We do a lot of educational theory and how do people learn? And what's the, like I said earlier, the static artifact in a case is not how everybody learns. And college professors, I think, have figured that out. Just lecturing for 3 hours a week isn't always effective for everybody. And so we're just always having to think about what's the newest technology. Is it a passing fad? Is there something here for us? Or is this a better strategy to go old school and people still like touching things in a certain way?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah. And I think we all learn differently. Some learn by hearing, right. Some learn by seeing, some learn by actually doing. So, right. You have those kinesthetic learners, that just right. have to have their hands on everything. So right. I think it's important to be able to meet the needs of the population to the best of your ability. And speaking right. of meeting the needs, one of the things that you shared with me, which I was kind of blown away by, is that, and I think people don't realize this, most museums only show you a very small amount of their collection.
Right.
Right. Like I tell people, I think Crystal Bridges is like maybe 5% of right. the collection is visible. The rest of it, you're like, well, wait, where is all this? It's stored away. And in the same way, you guys have stored a lot of archives, a lot of items that you've stored away. How are you determining what should be stored away and how you circulate other things into the main collection so that people can partake of them?
Our curator and our collection staff work on that. And sometimes maybe it's something new that's come in that's especially interesting. So we'll find a way to put that out there because, like right now, our recent acquisition of some Andrew Kilgore photos, we know the public's interested in that and they want to show up for that. And we know that there are a lot of community members in the photos. So that's a great hook for people to feel connected to that.
Right.
But then there are other things you have to think about. Is it safe to put it out? Or if we want to display it, is it safe for the artifact and is it safe for the people? And so, for example, in one of our exhibits right now, we put up the whites only door from the Springdale train depot from the 50s, 60s. So there's both the safety of it, where we wanted to put it. Will it crumble, fall apart? It's got some toxic chemicals in it.
Sure.
And
like
at the
lead.
same time, will it be, is it too sensitive?
Yeah.
Is it too offensive? Or how do you tell that story in the right context?
Sure.
So we figured out a way to do it for this exhibit. But in another exhibit, we might say, this isn't the right way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the topic, it's the time, or there's an anniversary. Like when it was the Buffalo River's 50th anniversary of becoming a national river, we had a Buffalo River exhibit of photographs. And so sometimes that's how you decide.
Sure, sure. Well, you bring up an interesting point that as a curator, as a museum director, there is some delicate decision making that goes into this, right? Because, I'm thinking like, even as an African American, I'm like, I want to see that door, as a reminder of how things used to be. And, I know that, there's always like one of the things I learned when I got here about sundown towns here.
Right.
And so just the historical significance of that. And I remember talking with a player for the Razorbacks from the 70s who said when he first got here on campus, he was told where to go and where not to go.
That's right.
And where to be and where not to be. And if he didn't have himself on campus by a certain time, it could be problematic, even if he was a star, right?
That's
on
right.
the team. And so
that's right.
I just think that I was fascinated to hear that story. And I just think that it's important for us to understand history, right? We can't be ruled by it, but we need to be mindful and aware of it?
It's been really interesting to observe people's interactions with that particular artifact, the whites only door, and it's out in the hallway where it's easy for people to see and pass by, because we've had young kids say, what is that about? What does that mean?
Right.
And you talk to them about that.
It's a teachable moment.
Right. But then, like, we had a group of seniors from Texas, a tour group, and as they're coming in the door, almost every one of them paused in front of that artifact and looked at it and said, I remember that. And there was a moment of pause and reflection for them. And you realize, like, it wasn't actually that long ago.
Yeah, right.
And it was really interesting to watch them and their feelings about it.
Sure.
And then compare that to the young kids too. And so that is the great thing about that kind of material artifact thing, is it becomes a touch point for all kinds of reflection. Yeah.
And it's the simple fact of having that something like that, like put away or stored somewhere, then it doesn't introduce those conversations,
right?
Which need to happen, and which are just powerful anyway, right? I mean, right. I think in terms of the collective nature of human beings as we continue to advance in society, we need to engage why we are where we are and how we got here, and what is it going to take for the next iteration of our society, of the next generation.
Well, that's the perfect transition for me to say something about next year, 2026. Okay. Museums and cultural organizations everywhere are going to be working on the American birthday, the 250th. And right. So everybody's been talking about this for years. And I think that's going to be our theme next year for all of our exhibits and our programming, is that, like, reflecting on 250 and how did we get here?
Yeah.
Do we like who we are?
Yep.
But also, how can we learn from that to take us next 250? And what do we hope for ourselves?
Yeah, I think that's really important. I sometimes forget about that. 1776 to 2026, that's 250 years.
You're going to be so tired of it by the end of 2026.
I'm sure.
It's going to be everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah. It's definitely going to be everywhere. But I think it's important for us to remember and kind of reflect on that, because it is a good chance for us to look back as we look ahead.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
So, and in the grand experiment that is the United States of America.
Right.
So, yeah.
And thinking of ourselves and understanding our own resilience, and across these 6 counties, and we have bigger cities and small towns and disappeared towns and people who've come and gone from here. And we're now this incredibly diverse place compared to lots of other parts of Arkansas.
Sure.
And so who's come here? Why did they come here? And how have we all overcome? And why are we all here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just kind of talking about some of the things that you will see and experience when you come to the Shiloh Museum of Ozark History. Can you share just a little the story of the Front Porch project and what it means for the community?
That was a really fun project. It wasn't called the Front Porch till right at the end. We didn't know what to call it, but we got a grant through the Walton Family Foundation via Project for Public Spaces, and 3 different entities here in Northwest Arkansas got that. We were one of them. And so we had these public input sessions and asking people, what would you like to see more of? And the idea was something on the grounds. We have 4 acres here, and everybody loves our flowers and the plants and all of those things. But what could we do to make the space more inviting? And we heard a couple of things over and over again: more color and more place for young people to just hang out.
Yeah.
And that would create some welcome. And so an architect with Project for Public Spaces came up with the idea for the big bench and the shade sail things that we have out there. And then Josh Hart from Natural State Treehouses built it, brought it to life.
Wow.
And then we ran a naming contest, and we had 3 people enter and come up with Front Porch. And so what's more Arkansas than that, right?
Absolutely.
Is a front porch.
Yeah.
And so that's the idea. It's a welcoming place. And it is really fun to see people just hanging out on the big bench. And we've got some more work to do out front. We're going to continue to grow on that. And the woman who designed the shade sail panels is a quilter, and she designed them to represent things about the Ozarks and Shiloh, so they have meaning too.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. Man, if you have some Wi-Fi out there, people would just come out there and hang out. So.
We do.
Oh,
we do have
okay. Well, there you go. Well, you heard it here first on I Am Northwest Arkansas that they do have Wi-Fi at the Front Porch at the Shiloh Museum of Ozark History. So how is the Shiloh Museum evolving to represent a more diverse and changing Northwest Arkansas? And I just right out of the gates, one of the things that I saw that I was like really impressed by was just the multi-language displays and the descriptions. So everything's in English and Spanish. So you start with that. But how are you trying to incorporate between that, some of the exhibits that are on display right now, which I was blown away by, but how are you incorporating the diverse community that is Northwest Arkansas?
Well, a joke I like to make is white people really like their stuff. And so everybody thinks all their stuff should be in a museum.
Right.
And mine included. I'm the same way. But not every community and people feels that way.
Yeah.
And so we're doing a lot of things. Like we started this project called Ozark Voices, and we have these community days. And we did one with Marshallese. We did one called The Black Experience recently. And we did one that was entirely a Spanish language immersion night. And we partnered with one community and we set up digitization and oral history booths, interview booths. And it's going to take a while for people to understand that. But people also think like, why would you want my doodad that my grandma used to cook with? Right? But we do. That represents your experience, but also you might still be using it, right?
Sure.
And we don't have endless storage. And so newer communities, we know we're going to have to fill those storytelling gaps with other things, especially photos and video. That's a great way to do it. And when people are willing to start sharing their story, it's fascinating. Why did they come to the United States? And we have this unique Marshallese population that the rest of the country really doesn't have.
Right.
Their stories are fascinating too. And so you just have to keep building that trust. And that's how we will ultimately diversify it. And then the programming part is easy. Throwing an event, having speakers, doing activities, workshops. That doesn't take changing a whole display or a whole exhibit.
Yeah.
That's an easy thing to do with the community.
Okay. All right. So you guys are actively working on ways to meet the needs and communicate with every aspect of Northwest Arkansas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's very cool. Tell us about the 1850s Cabin Preservation Project and its challenges. And just so everybody knows, if you come out here, the Shiloh Museum has kind of like, there's a bunch of land around it and there's a bunch of older buildings that really give you a glimpse inside what life must have been like here in the Ozarks back in the day. So I'd love for you just to kind of share a little bit about that 1850s Cabin Preservation Project.
That was a fun project. That was years in the making, and it finally got to the point that it just wasn't safe to go in anymore. It had been a log structure that was moved here from out in eastern Washington County, which is a pretty typical thing to do at places like ours, is to move a building onto your property. And people loved going in and out of it. It's right off the Greenway, but buildings are only ever trying to fall down, especially old ones. And so the board and we just worked through a decision-making process about the cabin in particular. We either have to go all in or tear it down.
Yeah.
And it's iconic. And how are we going to get people to support our preservation efforts and donate money to that if we tear down this thing that's been an icon?
Yeah.
And it was, it's part of our logo. It's all these things. And the board really, we just worked out money from our reserves, from our endowment, a little bit of fundraising, and it was very expensive. And we found the only guy in Arkansas who's truly certified to do log construction work. Mm-hmm. He was fantastic and kind of an educator. If he was working and you stopped by, he would tell you all about what he was doing. And we worked with an architect in North Little Rock called Gary Clements. He's good at preservation work. And we finally got to it and got it done. And it was so fun to celebrate it. And then Preserve Arkansas gave us an award for preservation education, because it's an educational building. We do a lot of programming in there, but also people going by were asking questions. And when it got finished, we got calls. How did you do that? Who did you use? How do I do this myself?
Right. Yeah. That's very cool. Well, I mean, and certainly, there's not that we get to pat ourselves on the back that often, but it's always nice when you do engage in something that's so well received by the community.
And it's a community question over and over again with our old buildings and our historic sites. Are you going to invest in it?
Yeah.
And make it a thing and hang on to it and be a good steward of it? or is it time to take it down?
Right.
And sometimes you do have to take it down.
Sure.
Sometimes things are beyond repair, but it's a decision that we have to make over and over and over again, especially in our growing cities around here.
Yeah. And that actually leads me to my next question, because one of the things that you impressed upon me was the size of the collection. And so with over 500,000 historic images, how do you prioritize what is accessible and what is digitized, right? Because when you think of digitization nowadays, there's a lot that can be cataloged and then shared seamlessly that we just didn't have access to 15, 20 years ago. So how are you kind of managing that process?
It's hard because everything is cool.
Yeah.
Right? The way we were able to start our digitization program completely a few years ago and then finished a major collection, well, last year actually, was our largest collection, which was the Washington County Historical Society had donated their photo collection to us. And it's the one that most people requested.
Yeah.
And so that seemed like an obvious, okay, it's very big and it'll make an immediate impact when we do that.
Yep.
And we have a photographer on staff who works in the darkroom and she does all of those things. And it's proven to be true. And then we had to decide, well, what comes next? So sometimes, like right now, our Betty Davis exhibit, we made her collection a priority and it fit with the exhibit time and you're having to digitize anyway. And we've started talking about what is the next big collection to move on to. So it's a matter of what do people want? And then sometimes it's easiest if it's the thing that came in the door. So we're trying to do that, digitize new things immediately and then working our way backwards.
Yeah. Is there a way for teachers that are potentially going to bring their students here to kind of preview some things in advance?
Yes, it's fun and potentially a rabbit hole.
Okay.
You have to be prepared. Yes. If you go to our website under collections, you will
What's
see.
What's the website address?
It's shilohmuseum.org.
Okay.
And if you scroll
we'll put that
down,
in the show notes. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
If you scroll down, you'll see collections, I think under researchers, and there's a link to our online database. And you can just put in a search term like chickens.
Yeah.
And everything that we have labeled that has anything to do with chickens will come up in your search.
Yeah.
And then you can continue to refine it. But you'll see what we have for artifacts, where they're located. You'll see photos. We don't put the whole photo. We put a little thumbnail that's watermarked if we have the photo digitized, because we don't ever want everybody to take the photos.
Sure.
And the files are too big. But you get a glimpse then of what we have. And it's really fun.
Yeah. Now, do you guys have the rights to all those photos now, or how does that work?
It's complicated.
Yeah.
And most of them we do, actually. But like we are the morgue for all the photos from the Northwest Arkansas Times, for example.
Okay.
And so we have an agreement with them. We hold the photos. We take care of them. We can use them for educational purposes. But if anybody in the public wants that photo, we have to get permission from them.
I got you.
So that one's complicated.
Yep.
There are others that have restrictions which is pretty normal. Like, I don't want this to be shown to the public until I've been gone 20 years.
Yeah,
that
sure.
kind of thing.
Yep.
Or sometimes we have a shared agreement and we're telling people, we would love to digitize your photos and we could share them with you. You take your photos home. We'll give you copies, but we would have them in our files for research and storytelling. So we have all kinds of different agreements. Mostly we own them.
That's the beauty of technology nowadays, though. I mean, it totally gives you that flexibility.
So much more flexibility. And we're working with a group to hopefully get their collection of meeting notes, board minutes, events, photos, all kinds of stuff. And it would be entirely digital. And I hope we get there with this group. We'd love to have their collection, but it would be our first all digital collection. And our curator has a certificate in that and knows how to do fancy things with digital files.
Oh, that's very cool. So this is more of a personal question for you. Do you have a favorite artifact or story from the collection that really resonates with you personally?
It changes all the time, but probably a through line is the Shiloh Meeting Hall, which is not an artifact. It's a building.
Yep.
But it's very boxy. It's rather plain, but it's this really beautiful example of vernacular architecture. And it's just this beautiful building in its simplicity. And you can just feel what it was like to be there in the 1870s. And it was built so well. And the 1871 pieces of it are in great shape. The 2018 renovation pieces already need help. And so it is always reminding me of solid things can last.
Isn't it remarkable how, like, you can look back in history and see things that were just built better?
Yes.
It's crazy. I mean, we have all the technology at our disposal and now AI, yet and still there are things that were built 100, 200, even 300 years and beyond.
Right.
You know, because I think about walking through Europe and looking at all of the churches and everything else that are resilient, have made it through world wars and everything else and are still standing. And I think it's a testament to human achievement in building. And so that's why I think nowadays, that's why one of the reasons why people are so disappointed with current modern day structures in some instances, because they just don't hold up the way things did back in the day.
Right. And some of them seem very temporary, and there's nothing to make you feel old, like seeing, say, a Walmart or a shopping center be torn down that you remember being built, and or a mall close to where I grew up. I remember when it was built and it was a big deal, and it's already been torn down. There's something else in its place.
That's funny.
That will make you feel old, but it makes those buildings feel very temporary.
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, I think there's something to be said for being able to come here to work every day and seeing what you see. And it's literally living history, and just being able to interact with it must be a lot of fun.
It's a blast. I love it every day.
Yeah. Well, listen, this is the last question that I have for you. And I think this is a broader question. It's one of the things that you have to really think about. But what legacy do you hope Shiloh will leave on the cultural landscape of Northwest Arkansas? And that's a landscape that's continuing to evolve and change.
I think maybe that's it, is I hope that Shiloh will always be a place where our understanding of who we are is always evolving.
Yeah.
And we're always finding new pockets of stories and communities and experiences. And I hope that that's what it is that people will look at us and say, I wonder how that thing happened. Even if it was 10 years ago, I better ask the people at Shiloh. I need to go visit Shiloh.
Right. Yeah. Make this one of your main stops. So,
right.
You know, I mean, you think about the genealogy collection at the Fayetteville Public Library.
Right.
And then you think about the collection that you have here. Anybody that's doing any research on the Ozarks, they need to come through these doors.
We get many researchers, and people don't realize that is a huge service we offer. We have a historian. Not every history museum gets to have its own historian, and she fulfills all kinds of research requests. And so we get to find out through her indirectly all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah.
And people literally from all over the world ask all kinds of questions, and we try to come up with the answer.
That's very cool. Man, you guys should almost have a podcast to talk about all the cool things.
We used to have one a long time ago, and we've talked about it.
Yeah.
Maybe 26.
Yeah, maybe so. Well, we'll have to talk some more about that. But, well, no, this has really been fantastic. And I really appreciate you making time in your schedule to sit down with us and share a little bit about the Shiloh Museum of Ozark History and why it's so important to you and why it should be so important to anyone living here in Northwest Arkansas. And even somebody that's coming here, it's always good to know what you're getting yourself into. I had no idea that this existed when I first moved here 11 years ago.
One of the things we're hoping we can do next year is come up with a newcomers program that's specifically for people who are new to the area, even if you've been here 50 years, whatever. But to get to know, this is a great way to get to know the region and who we've always been and help you find your place here. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I want to encourage anyone listening to this, please, please, please come visit the Shiloh Museum of Ozark History right here in downtown Springdale. What are the hours of operation? We're open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 5, and we're always free. Okay. Well, there you go. I love free, so that's always a good thing. But I'd love for you guys to come down here and visit Angie and the rest of her amazing team. And I want to give a shout out to Lauren Husband, who I have a working relationship with. I used to work with her at her former employer, and she's here now doing some amazing things. So shout out to Lauren for actually making this meeting happen. She did. She's good at that. Yes. So there you go. So I really appreciate that. Angie, it has truly, truly been a pleasure. Again, remind us of the website address. ShilohMuseum.org. Okay. And they're open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 5. So I really want to encourage you guys to come down here. If you do, please ask for Angie, say hello, tell her you heard about it first on the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. Support them in any way that you can. And if you feel so led, whether you have some artifacts sitting in your basement or in your attic or
something along those lines that needs to exist here at the museum, please make them aware of that. And I'm sure they will work with you to figure out a way to share that information. So
very much so. And if you don't have an artifact, we want to know your story.
Yeah, there you go. Stories matter, as we said. So there you go. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you again, Angie, for joining us. And we really appreciate all the hard work that you're doing here in Northwest Arkansas to continue to make history relevant.
Thank you. We loved having you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there you have it, folks. This was an inspiring conversation, and we really appreciate Angie sharing her vision for how the Shiloh Museum can be not just a repository of artifacts, but a living, community-centered space. For listeners wanting to dig deeper, be sure to visit shilohmuseum.org. Check out their exhibitions and events and experience the Front Porch for yourself. And you heard she said they got Wi-Fi. So get your cup of coffee, come on down to the Front Porch, sit down, do a little bit of work, and immerse yourself around a little local history. I think you will be the better for it. Listen, I'm Randy Wilburn. This has been another episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. Remember, our podcast comes out rain or shine every Monday. So we'll see you back here next week with another new episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes or more information on becoming a guest, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.
Hey folks, Randy Wilburn here. You know, I always know what's happening in Northwest Arkansas because I read NWA Daily. Every morning, I get a 5-minute write-up with local news, events, new business alerts, and more, straight to my inbox. It's my go-to for staying connected to this amazing community. When I meet new transplants to NWA, one of the first things I tell them is subscribe to NWA Daily. It's the best way to discover local events, try new businesses, and support nonprofits making a difference. Stay connected, stay informed, and sign up for free today at nwadaily.com.